Welcome to the New Zealand Sales and Marketing Insider, brought to you by me, Paul Spain, along with Gorilla Technology. Greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Sales and Marketing Insider. I'm your host, Paul Spain. Today we're speaking with Moumita Desroy. So I said your name wrong just as we get started. Sometimes I trip up. Moumita is a super talented marketing leader with over 15 years experience working with major brands such as the Walt Disney Company, Virgin Mobile, Ogilvy, and Dulux, where she works today as marketing communications manager. Moumita has established herself as one of the leading voices on LinkedIn in New Zealand over the past 2 or 3 years. New Zealand Sales and Marketing Insider is brought to you by Gorilla Technology and 40 Thieves Nut Butters. Gorilla are the go-to company for innovative small to medium New Zealand organizations who want the best of managed information technology and cybersecurity services. Well, welcome along, Moumita. Great to have you here in the studio.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And I think I know why you tripped on my name, Paul, because you're more used to calling me Mo than Moumita.
That's true. That's true. You are known as Mo for those that are familiar with you.
Yeah. So I don't mind.
Thank you. Well, let's jump in. There's so much to talk about, but let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Tell us where you grew up, and what led you into the big wide world of marketing, communication, sales. How did you land in this big world?
Sure. In my introduction, did you say 15 years? I think I caught that. For me, it's nearly like 100 years back. So I grew up in Calcutta, in India. And, when I was waiting for my university results to be out, people said that you enjoy writing. Why don't you do a few copy tests with advertising agencies? Now, I was graduating with statistics. I did not consider copywriting, that's how I started, as a profession. I always thought that to be a hobby. Marketer, yes, but not so much, copywriting. But anyways, I just, early 20s, like 19, 20-year-old. So I did do a few copy tests, 5 of them actually. And I cleared 2 of them. One was with McCann Worldwide. And I was a copy intern for about 6 months. That was a great journey. All I was doing was, I don't know these days if people remember a one-show book, a Khan book. So we would go through those books, try and write explanation notes, press releases, and all of that. By the 6th month, I got tired of it and I quit and I went back to studying. I completed my master's, my MBA, and then joined advertising back with BBDO. So I think, and when I joined back into advertising, I joined as an account manager. And what happened was, I think, that left brain, right brain kind of a role, the relationship management with clients, I quite enjoyed doing that role. So I became an account executive and then gradually moved on to account planning.
So what did that role look like? I mean, I've worked in ad agencies, but I've never sort of delved into the ins and outs of of exactly what these roles look like, because I haven't really had to think too much about it. But what do you do as an account manager within Adland?
So an account manager would be a client servicing person. So they're kind of the bridge. And I have a very funny story about what does an account manager do. My grandmom would ask me, what does an account manager in an advertising agency does? And she would say, do you write copy? Do you write an ad? I said, no. Do you do the drawing? I said, no, I don't do that. The art as well. And then she asked, oh, okay, so you must be the photographer. I said, no, I don't do that as well. So what do you do? So I said, look, I think I am, the friend of the bride and family of the groom. So I'm that bridge which brings the client and the creative management team together and kind of, translate the client's brief into actionable items for the creative to deliver. I don't know if I could explain that to you.
Yeah,
Rem.
yeah, that's a good way to put it. How much selling is involved? How does that side of it look? Or is it mostly I guess it's mostly fostering an existing relationship.
Yeah,
But depending on how well that goes, right, that can lead to getting more business or
absolutely.
less or no business
Yeah,
with a client,
absolutely.
right?
No, absolutely. Account-based management, right? So you
Mhm.
get more business out of your existing clients, and also participate in pitching to a new business, to a new client. So I think as you grow up on the ladder for account management and account planning, acquiring new business is also a kind of a top priority for you. And then because these industries are quite small and people know one another, words go around. So it often happens that we would come to know of a client announcing a pitch. We would go, and it is all about relationship building from day one. So I think one of the best pitches I participated in very early on with McCann was for Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola's regional business. And I remember we painted a wall with Coca-Cola branding, and they were doing all symbols of the city of Calcutta, like football, film, food. We painted like wall graffiti just for that one pitch.
Cool.
It was super exciting. And as a 20, 21, 22-year-old, it was like one of the best experiences I've had.
Yeah, that's neat. So there's definitely similarities to sort of account managers and other sectors, but
Yeah.
there are obviously some real uniques in terms of the pitching for business and so on, right? If you're for instance a technology services business like mine, you're probably not going to be going in and painting a wall. But that's really cool, and I think that there are some really interesting facets of the whole pitching process
Mhm.
that agencies go through. And I know that there are some usually sort of smaller niche ones who don't tend to participate. It is quite a quite an odd thing, in many ways, that you have to put together all your ideas and so on, and a bunch of agencies do, and most of them don't end up working with the client, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And things obviously have changed a lot in so many years, but I remember we would do it like all printed and all creating mock-ups. I don't know if kids these days even understand those terms, like a mock-up, but then those were fun, creating mock-ups and printing layouts and taking to the client, talking about it. So yeah, fascinating days.
Yeah. So that period of time, what are the things that sort of stood out to you that you learned, whether it was very early on or through that account management role, in terms of how to be successful in terms of the account management, and looking after the relationships and
Yeah.
winning new business.
Yeah, I think relationship management is one of the top things I learned because um, when you're an account executive, like absolutely junior rung, you get to bear the brunt of, a lot of client wrath. Also, a lot of fights with the creative team. One of my biggest fights was with my creative team. But the best thing about this extremely dynamic and challenging environment is these are a passionate bunch of people. We are all trying to do our best, what we think is right for the customer, for the client, and we all have our own very strong opinions.
Yeah.
So I think relationship management would be one of those, and also community building, because you become part of this large team and managing a number of multiple businesses, giving you the flavor of FMCG one day,
Mm.
fast moving consumer goods, and then durables the other day. It was a fascinating learning for me early on of managing multiple industry types, sectors, and I think that is what prompted me into becoming kind of a cross industry marketer, because I've dabbled into multiple industries.
Mm.
I know marketers, some of them like to stay on if they've joined telecom, they would continue with telecom, but I haven't. I have done a few industries. So I think,
Yeah, yeah,
starting
yeah.
out.
So when it comes down to that relationship management, what were the keys for you to to do well in looking after those relationships and fostering them?
I think so. I had my advertising career very early on, the first 5 or 6 years. So for me, it was understanding client, putting myself into their shoes. Just like I explained, being their friend, not trying to overspend on behalf of the client as well, and working on budgets, and then just just understanding the client's business and being able to translate that, and also the other way around, translate that creative back to the client so that we could explain that why would this work for you best.
It's a lot of listening, a lot of
Yeah,
you know
hand holding,
empathy,
empathy. Yeah,
and trying to bridge that gap.
absolutely.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. That's great. And so, what was next
Right.
from there?
So next, what happened was, I think, being on the client side, but the bug of being on the client side kind of bit me, and I got headhunted by one of my clients to join Tata Docomo. Tata Docomo was like a JV, a joint venture with Japan's NTT Docomo and India's Tata Group. And also, we worked with Virgin Mobile. So it was like a big bouquet of brands. So I became like, I was taking care of, because India is so large, we would have regions, or we call them circles. So I was taking care of the Eastern Circle for the telecom business. Yeah. So I became a client.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, what was different for you, sort of from flipping over to being, a marketer at the client end?
Yeah.
Because you still needed, you needed to get the same outcomes
Yeah.
that your clients would have done, but you were deeply involved in that. So, how did that change things?
I think I opened up to 360 degrees of marketing communications. That is something that happened, and also because I was managing budgets, um, and then I was being accountable for you know deliveries of generating leads for my sales team, and
So you were much more closer to the
the
metrics in
business.
terms
Yeah,
of, what you were spending. That's your
yeah,
budget, and you've got X to spend, and you want to
yeah,
get the maximum,
absolutely.
result from a
Yeah,
sales perspective.
yeah.
So it was a lot more data driven in that
It was a lot more
case.
data driven and also closer to business, more hands on the
Mm,
field. So
mm.
I was, initially I would be traveling alongside our sales teams, remotest parts of India sometimes, because it was the sunshine industry, uh, just starting on the sunrise industry of,
Mm.
of India during that time. And people were like establishing telecom towers. We would go talk to women, and that's another story that I love sharing. These are, sometimes people are farmers who spend their entire day in the field, and the wife who would be taking care of the household, but also go to the field to support her husband. So we were trying to create second income for these women, for these families, and therefore we said that create your own retail outlet and sell telecom connections, a mobile connection.
Oh
So
wow.
those were the days when people were trying to just get familiar with a cellular connection.
Mhm.
So yeah, fascinating days. Being more closer to the business, delivering on budgets. Those were the things I think I learned from my early days in telecom.
Mm, mm. And what were the pressures like? How did what did you put into play to get good results?
I think visibility was a big thing to master, because just because there were so many brands, at least 3 to 4 brands launching at the same time, and telecom at that time was extremely reactive marketing, not because it's very competitive, And India is a very prepaid dominated business. So 96% of Indian market is prepaid. Only corporates, account-based like customers would have postpaid connection. So therefore, visibility being top of mind was extremely important. Um, just paint the town red if red is the brand color.
Yeah.
Those were very important matrix to drive, because I know if a CEO was doing the rounds like a field visit, it's all about like shelf life, how much shelf space you're occupying. It's absolutely like, fast moving consumer goods, or even modern day retail space management. That kind of a learning, that kind of a competitiveness among operators.
And so, what were your channels? You talked about you know people moving into sort of selling connections for you. What were the other mechanisms in terms of your own branded stores and other retailers? What did that look like?
Yeah, so it absolutely own branded stores, and also multi-branded outlets. And these are small stores like dairies, like convention store in New Zealand. These dairies would sell connections and trying to occupy a good space there. So therefore, definitely below the line media, which is like all of these outdoor branding, all of this. Events, a lot of focus on events, trying to generate leads out of those events.
Oh, what sort of events would you do?
Say, for example, mall activation programs, because people wanted to experience what this new thing is. And I'm talking about early 2000s, 2003, 2004. No, did I get that correct? No, sorry, 2012, 2014, that period when I was in telecom. So yeah, those kind of experiences, those kind of events, and also corporate events, visiting corporates and generating leads from those events, trying to migrate from one operator to the other. So yeah, those kind of events, and obviously above the line campaigns, advertising campaigns. Television played a very big part, radio and television. Not so much digital at that age, but then it was just getting started.
Sure. Now, what was the sort of balance between marketing and communications, and what would sort of sit in each side from in terms of what you did?
So I think communications was just a part of that entire role. So when we talk about communications, it would primarily be managing agencies, managing third-party partners, advertising agencies, public relation agencies to get good press. So yeah, I would say that primarily marketing, metrics, deliveries, plus definitely creating that brand persona around it. And also because these are national brands, the national campaigns would get generated out of the headquarters and then translated by region, because every 200 250 kilometers that you travel in India, the language changes, the dynamics changes, the flavor of the communication changes. So translating that national communication back into regional was another part of this role.
And how important do you find that is, even today, where often New Zealand gets treated as part of Australia, or part of a APAC region or APJ or whatever, depending on the entity.
Yeah.
How have you found that? Do you see sort of similarities
Yes.
to the regional aspects of India?
Yeah, absolutely. Because New Zealand is so diverse, right? I mean, we may be small, but then we have to create comms for multiple, I wouldn't say communities, but then very different kind of mindsets. So I remember I was having this conversation in one of my earlier days in New Zealand, in one of my interviews, and I was telling them that, look, the last role that I had with the Walt Disney Company as one of the marketing managers for one of the regional entertainment channels, had a weekly viewership of 42 million people. And then when you compare that to here, a population of 5 million, but the thing is, even within that 5 million population base, there are small groups, and which is like absolutely, micro marketing. I would say micro marketing or hyper targeting. So therefore, it is essential to understand these people who may have absolutely different requirements and then cater to. That was one of my initial challenges, when I was transitioning from managing a huge base, huge numbers, to smaller numbers, but with diverse needs. And understanding the local audience and local nuances. And often, even right now in my role, a lot of communications gets developed in Australia and then gets translated to Kiwi taste. But then I think we have a lot of fascination for 100% New Zealand, 100% pure New Zealand. So yeah, getting, locally made has a lot of, I think, attraction to the New Zealanders, to Kiwis.
And any tips on sort of how do you go through and translate something, whether it's been designed for one country and needs to be sort of niched down, or as you say, designed or targeted at a bigger region like Australasia, and then customizing that down for a New Zealand or a subsection of New Zealand in one way or another.
Yeah, I think I would do it two ways. One is definitely talk to the people who are working in the field, the sales team, actually work very closely with them to understand the local flavors, local requirements. And also, no matter how large your organization is, you have, agencies supporting you from your headquarters, but always have someone locally who's going to help you get these local nuances. So yeah, doing those two things have kind of kept us on track, I think.
And how important is that piece of talking to those that are on the ground selling? How tightly connected do you need to be with the sales force?
Very closely. Also, not just the sales force, also understanding the customers, going out and talking to the customers ourselves is so much. I think I would consider research or customer study and understanding as a big part of being a good marketer. So just picking up a phone, talking to them on a regular basis, identifying a few group of people who you become very, you develop close relationships with, and then keep talking to them just to kind of get a first-hand feel, not via your sales team, but just a first-hand feel of what they're thinking, feeling, what they want from us. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Now, after being in the telco world, you moved on to in the world of news.
Yeah, I did. I joined media. So it was one of the not one of the, I think it was the leading newspaper of India that time. Huge readership once again. And the dynamics of the workplace wasn't too different. Very challenging, motivated set of bunch of people, but much more creative. So I found a lot of similarity from my advertising days back into when I went to media, because there was always this, conflict of the content creators, the reporters, journalists, and then the sales and marketing teams. So I found a lot of similarities there, but then that was also fascinating because my customers would essentially be two bunches, two sets of people. One, the readers, that's like business to consumer set of customers.
Because you need to sell subscriptions.
Yes, sales subscriptions. Plus, the other set would be going back to agencies who would buy advertising space. So I got to manage these two groups of customers, clients, and that was a great experience, a learning experience as well.
Wow. So, any things that sort of stood out in terms of the subscriber side of the marketing that you can recall?
Subscriber side of the marketing is, once again, if I can explain the buying pattern of news, like printed news, because I was working with a printed newspaper daily. It's mostly done off the stands and someone delivers it to your home. So our objective would always be to increase the dependence on delivering it to your home, because then we would know who the person is, and then we can tie in bundle offers, offer discounts, coupons, etc., bring them to our events and all of that. So obviously we've always wanted to reduce stand purchase, a local newspaper stand purchase, and push subscription sales and create loyalty bonuses. And I think I got to learn a lot about managing loyalty programs during my newspaper days, managing subscriptions. So we would go talk to various partners like telecom companies, like movie theaters, to offer discounts that we could, use as our subscription tool, as our freebie, as kind of a, tie in, so that it's easier to sell those subscriptions.
Yep.
Yeah. So loyalty, I think loyalty programs and bonus programs is something that I really picked up during that time.
Yeah. So that really helped. And then in terms of selling print advertising, and I'm presuming there was online advertising there as well. Probably a different mix today, but what were the learnings there?
So by then, I think digital took off really well when I was with newspaper and we were selling both. Now, it did take off well, but then no one is willing to pay for news online. People are going to pay for news for a printed newspaper, not so much as online, because it's available so easily, right? So I think our biggest challenge was not to sell advertising space, but to sell subscription for the digital versions of the newspaper.
Right.
Because print was still the majority revenue earner, and digital always was an add-on. I have been away from that market for quite some time now. I don't know how it is, but I think digital always went as an add-on, because people found information somewhere, and for free, why would they pay for subscription online? So it was very advertising dependent, particularly the online, because we could sell on eyeballs and we could sell on, the other matrix that we would early days of digital, we would measure.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been interesting sort of following it in New Zealand, as we've seen, the likes of NBR and New Zealand Herald sort of go to subscription, online subscription type models, and how they've handled that. And that might be a thing we delve into on another occasion.
Yeah.
Now, after that, you were doing what exactly?
So from print, I went to broadcast media. I went to television, and I spent some time with television, managing shows, promoting shows, and similar kind of experience as well, talking to advertising agencies to, integrate their product as part of a show. For example, right now I see this peanut butter jar sitting on the table, and I was just wondering what this is.
Right. Well, that's our product placement for
exactly
for our video viewers, and that's the 40 Thieves peanut butter crunchy.
I'm glad it is crunchy, because
So you'll be able to take that one away after the show, and of course, because you've asked me, now the audio listeners are across that as well. So
nice.
Well done. You've obviously got some experience in this.
So that was part of my job, you see, Paul. That was what I would do. I mean, I would have a show and I would have to integrate a brand within that shows storyline. So that was a fascinating experience as well.
Yeah, and that's becoming more and more the
Yeah.
norm, isn't it? Is that something in the work that you do now with Dulux? Is that something that you've found any opportunities to do that? Because yeah, the New Zealand market's quite different,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I imagine there are opportunities that
Yeah.
would come up on that front.
Yeah, I'm sure there would be, because there are plenty of opportunities to do, this is not exactly an advertising, we would call it like an advertorial, which looks very native, which looks very organic. But then it is so seamless, it's kind of knit into it could be a storyline, it could be like a printed article or something like that. Yeah, so those are the opportunities. Say, for example, we would have a magazine, an architectural magazine, and then we would showcase one of our homes painted in Dulux colors. But at the same time, do kind of an interview with the specification manager, for example, and talk about why this paint was specified. And it would look very educational. And it would read very educational and therefore not look so much salesy. So that is the entire idea of making or knitting it within the storyline, whichever the format is.
Yeah, yeah. So now in New Zealand, you've done your first role here in 2019 was in the telecommunications
Yeah.
world again, back to telecom.
Yeah.
But I guess, yeah, maybe tell us a little bit about, your work with Dulux, because that's where you are now, and you've been most recently.
Yeah.
Of course, very much a household name here in New Zealand, as many of the other organisations that you've worked with. So, what does that look like, and how are you enjoying that?
When I was growing up, so Dulux is an international brand, right?
Yeah.
But it's owned by different franchisees in different countries. So when I was growing up, there was this jingle that I was very fond of. I wondered what the magic is. It's Dulux, it's Dulux, it's Dulux. And then I think this was the first thing that I discussed during my interview. I'm so familiar with the brand, so fond of the brand. So it's like, it was an obvious yes when it came through. For Dulux, I get to work with a lot of architects and designers. They are my key stakeholders right now, because I take care of business-to-business marketing in Dulux. So, so just understanding a new industry. This is a completely new industry for me, right? And more so because I've come from a very consumer-facing brands, business-to-consumer kind of managing roles, and now to this. So it's been a very interesting learning journey for me as well, trying to interact with these people. They're like a mixed bunch of highly, talented, creative people, but at the same time technical. So, I love that bridge of being left brain, right brain balanced. I think I'm kind of like that as well. So, yeah, it's a good match, I'd say.
Yeah. So, what would be an example of a sort of customer?
A typical customer for me would be an architect, and a designer who's looking to specify a building, either a commercial or a residential, a home or something like that, or probably a block of apartments. So they're starting to lay it out as a project, as on paper. From there, it'll start to finally when the paint goes up on the wall.
And so, how do you reach that type of client?
It's a very difficult challenge because they don't want to spend too much time talking to you, as in, because they are very time challenged, to time pressed. They would do most of their research online, and that is where we are trying to find them when they've just started exploring for their projects, that looking at what products to use, because they would face, like, they would have challenges of what kind of substrate, what is the surface and it's not just about paint, right? It's about coatings, and it's about an entire system of a wall looking beautiful, a house becoming a home.
So that's part of your challenge, is to communicate that it's not just a paint, It's this bigger picture, the system.
That's one. And also identifying that person when he or she is in that exploration phase, because specification can change a project from what's on the paper to what's on the wall. It could be a long process, right? But the sales cycle is a very long cycle. So the decisions can change at every step. And every step when the decision changes, the person who's making those changes also becomes a different one. So for example, the architect to the designer to the painter to the builder to the painter. So decision can change at every step. So yeah, just going through that entire cycle.
Mm, mm. So, in terms of your experience in marketing, what are you doing at Dulux that's new and fresh compared to other things that you've had to do within your marketing mix?
I think this has been if I consider the sales cycle, this is the longest sales cycle that I've had to manage. So therefore, just being present at multiple touch points with different kind of audiences, and all of them are different. And a designer is very different from an architect. A painter is obviously very different from an architect. So trying to understand each one of their prerogatives and trying to talk to them in their language at every step, that has been quite a learning for me, because and also because this is manufacturing, and I've though this is like a product, like a tangible product, I've not really managed a tangible product. It's like news, media, telecom. Yeah, telecom, I was selling airtime. So you could say conversations or airtime was the product that I was selling. But this is more visible, I can touch, feel the paint. So a lot of learning about that as well. And it's very technical at the same time. So those are my new learnings from this industry. And also trying to bring this different set of audiences together and just trying to, them to stick through the specification. If it is Dulux, let what is specified, let that go on the wall.
Yeah, fascinating. And so what does it take to move the needle in a role like this for you?
I think staying patient, and then having conversations catering and absolutely customized to these different groups of people, and following them through, because like I mentioned, particularly architects and the younger ones, the graduates these days, they will not pick up the phone and talk to you. If they have a question, they'll go on to the like digitally, they will research. So, and trying to identify them at that stage is one of my biggest challenges. So yeah,
You're trying to convert them from being maybe a casual web visitor to someone whose details you've got, so you can email them, send them a color swatch, or
exactly.
those elements. And are you doing events as well? As that's part of it?
Yeah, events is a big part of it, I think, and thankfully we've gone back to doing in-person events, which is I think which is a big part of my role. So doing in-person events and qualifying those leads captured from those events into proper conversations and that we can carry forward. So yeah, so we would look at segments. It's divided. The industry is divided into, say, for example, hospitality, commercial. It could be aged care, education, all those different segments.
Mm-hmm.
So doing events within those segments, and then qualifying those leads.
Yeah. So looking back, not just at this role, but your, I guess, lessons from events. What are the tips to be successful on that event front? Because you've got to get people there.
Yeah.
And then you've got to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when I started out with events a long time back, it was a very physical experience. Right now, there is a digital component to it. So bringing those two together is crucial. So, for example, and QR codes has made such a great comeback. Using those, qualifying those leads, and bringing them back to your CRM is very crucial. And it's not just about having an event and then moving on, doing nothing thereafter. It is about, completely owning that event. So I'm talking not about exclusive events. I'm talking about participating in larger events where we are one of the operators. So therefore, we have to create some kind of distinction and stand out. So
And like a home show.
exactly, yeah. So we're trying to. So one of our partnerships is with Antarctic Heritage Trust, and we painted the Hillary's hut in the Scott base into 2017. That was like their 60th year. So, and right now, Dulux sponsors a virtual tour of the Hillary's hut. So bring those kind of unique experiences to our events, which will give people a great, thing to carry forward, remember. So, yeah. So those are things that are kind of, unique ways to stand out and make people remember our events, and then obviously translate them back into some good conversations.
Yeah. Okay. Was there anything else you wanted to add before I ask you the final question?
No, I think I've covered it
Yeah,
a fair bit.
it's been fascinating. Well, so this is the big question.
Oh my God, I'm scaring me.
If you could give our audience one piece of advice that they could take away in action tomorrow, what would that piece of advice be, Moumita?
Well, I have a piece of advice for myself. I don't know if it'll work for everyone. And that is, I wish someone told this to me earlier when I was, going through my early formative years, is to look at career as a matrix, not as a ladder, because I spent too much time trying to, go after the finishing line, because I've been always this extremely high frequency performer. So the finishing line looked very, very attractive to me. But in the process, I think I should have had spent more time with family. I should have had traveled more, which I do now as a matured professional. But then I wish early on in my career, I could have had done that. So I think my advice would be to look at career as like this matrix where you can go horizontally, vertically, diagonally, whichever way you can think of.
And you've done well with mixing and travel, haven't you? Because you've done quite a bit of travel. And for those that might look you up on LinkedIn, they would see that element that you spend overseas.
So I learned, and then I corrected myself. That's what I'm now advising people.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you very much for joining the show. It's been fascinating chatting with you today. And thanks everybody for listening in. Just a reminder, the New Zealand Sales and Marketing Insider is brought to you by Gorilla Technology and 40 Thieves Nut Butters. Gorilla are the go-to company for innovative small to medium organizations who want the best of managed technology services and cybersecurity. All right, that's it. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Moumita.
Thank you.